Bethlehem's future. This initiative is extremely important because Bethlehem is a wonderful community to live and do business. And as a result, people want to live here. And that means that Bethlehem is growing and Bethlehem is going to continue to grow. The purpose of the comp plan update process is to ensure that as we grow, we maintain or enhance the characteristics that make our town and our 7 hamlets such wonderful places to be, and possibly to even make them better. Now, Bethlehem developed our first comprehensive plan update back in 2004. I did not participate in this process because my wife and I had just had twins and we were deep in survival mode. But over the last 15 years, they've grown and allowed me to dive deep into this update process. But that's not the only change we've seen over the last 15 years. We communicate differently now with social media dominating many of our interactions. The demographics of our town have shifted to many of our residents being older. As a community, I believe we have a greater awareness of the importance of social justice and equity. And we're recognizing that climate change is not only going to impact the world, it will have profound effects on Bethlehem as well. So I cannot wait to hear your vision for our community and your ideas for achieving it. Tonight's an early step in the process, but I'm sure that collectively we're going to make it a big one. So thanks again to all of you for coming, and I'll now turn the mic over to Tanya Zwalen from Highland Planning.
Thank you, Supervisor. So thanks everybody for joining us. We're so excited that you're here. We've got 110 people here on Zoom. It looks like there's 8 people watching through the project website, and we have people joining by Facebook Live as well. I really wish that we could be all in the same room. I would have made you a big pot of decaf coffee and brought some cookies. And you know, I would have really liked to be with you in person. However, that's not the world we're living in. So I'm grateful that you've joined us and that we can be together virtually. And in some ways, you know, it is more convenient because it's a dark December night and we're able to be in our homes connecting to talk about this comprehensive plan kickoff. So our agenda tonight, really the goal is to be hearing from you all and listening to you all for the majority of the meeting. I am going to give a few brief instructions, and Bill Price from SWBR is going to introduce the consultant team and give a little bit of background on the project, the schedule, and the engagement process. And then I'm going to share a little bit of what we've heard so far. We've done some stakeholder interviews. But by 6:20, we are going to be breaking out into 6 breakout rooms. Charvi is going to magically move you from this group of 111 on Zoom, and we're going to end up in 6 different breakout rooms, having conversations of groups around, 7, because we added an extra one for environmental and sustainability. So we're going to have groups of about 20 and have a facilitated conversation for about a half hour, 40 minutes, and then we'll come back and hear what everybody talked about. So the majority is going to be conversation. And then at the end, we'll have a little bit of a Q&A and discussion, and then we'll talk about the next steps. If you have not already, if you could, there's a Google Doc in the chat. If you could sign in to the meeting so we know you're here and that you came. Okay, Bill.
Thanks, Tanya. Good evening, everybody. I'm Bill Price with SWBR. We're one of the team members helping the town put this comp plan together. Our consultant team is myself, Don Netzker, and Brittany Murphy from SWBR. Tanya, who you've met, Charvi Gupta, who is working extreme magic tonight, pulling this all together, and Nancy Rocca are from Highland Planning, handling the demographics as well as the public engagement portion of the project. Frank Armento and Mike Godfrey are from Fisher Associates. They'll be handling the environmental parts of the project, transportation, and infrastructure. Kevin Dworka is with us tonight as well, and Kevin is working on all of the economic development opportunities for the project. Tanya, the next slide, please. So that's our consultant team, but you have a lot of residents and town staff that are involved in the project and helping us as well. And we call them the Comp Plan Update Committee. That's not terribly appealing. So it's the Bethlehem Forward Update Committee. Giles Wagner, Jeremy Snyder, Kathleen Mannix, Bill Kutzer, Brian Giori, Jim Grady, Georgia Fishburne, Tom Coffey, Paul Baer, and Ben Ware, Brad Anderson, and Danya Flores are all volunteering to help the community with this project. Supervisor Van Leuven has been here. The other staff here tonight is Rob Leslie, the Director of Planning and Economic Development, Leslie Lombardo, a Senior Planner, Nate Owens, Senior Planner, and Karen Shaw, the town's open space coordinator. So those are we've got a lot of team there. Tanya, this is back to you.
Back to me. So I think I mentioned to everyone as you join, I think most of you are muted. You know, I think some of us have acclimated to the last 9 months of Zoom. And for some of us, this may be a new way to participate in a community meeting. So I'm just gonna take a minute and slow down and talk about the ways that you can participate tonight so that everybody is on the same level playing field here. The first thing is that some of us have, you know, background noise in our homes. So I think if you're not talking, if you would mute yourself, and if you highlight your video, there's a mute button, and there's also an option along the bottom of your screen or the top of your screen. If you'd like to, many of you are already submitting questions or comments, we will be watching the chat box. So you click the chat and you can send a message to everyone or to specific people individually. Oops, I'm sorry. You can also raise your hand by clicking on the participant button, and next to it, there's an option of more, and you can choose raise your hand. And attendees, if there's anyone by phone, I know we have at least one person by phone, you can press *9 to virtually raise your hand, and then we can unmute you to speak. So, you know, while we do have a lot of people here, we would like to hear from people when we get to the Q&A portion, audibly speak to us. So you can provide comments through the chat. For those of you on Facebook, we are monitoring the Facebook comments and checking those throughout the course of the meeting. And so those will be fed over to us, and we'll try to respond to those questions and comments as well. There will be several polls, and I think they're coming up right after this portion. And the poll will pop up onto Zoom in front of you, and you'll have an option to select a response. If for any reason you accidentally close that box, you can reopen it by hitting the polling button on your control panel of Zoom. And then lastly, we've mentioned that the breakout groups are going to be happening around 6:20, 6:30 this evening. We're going to be splitting up into 7 groups, and you're going to magically go there. Charvi is going to play the Wizard of Oz and split us up into those 7 groups. So there's nothing you need to do to land in your breakout group. That's going to happen automatically. Any questions on Zoom? If so, you can send me or Charvi a note in the chat if you're having any issues, or you can raise your hand. So here is our first poll. And the question is, where do you live? So a poll should have just popped up, and I can see you all answering right before my very eyes. So we're going to give a minute for folks to respond. It's clear that y'all have used Zoom before, how quickly you're doing this. 74 people have responded. We'll give it another few seconds here. Someone might have just annotated the screen. Okay, Charvi, do you want to close the poll?
Oh, cool.
Okay, so we have 47% of folks, the highest response from, that's almost half from Delmar, 21% from Ellesmere, then, are these in order? 13% from Slingerlands, 1% from other, maybe outside of the town. That's a pretty good breakout, and points to the person who annotated the map and circled themselves in Delmar. That was creative. Can everybody see the results?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm gonna move on. And Charvi, could you delete the annotation and launch the second poll? So the second question we wanted to hear from folks is, how did you hear about tonight's public meeting?
I need more options.
Did you launch it, Charvi?
Yes, and you should be able to see it.
Nope.
I am still seeing where do you live?
Are you able to view it now?
Here it is. No.
Charvi, I do not see it.
I think we'll move on to,
But points again to the person who wrote Facebook is how they learned of this meeting with the annotation. I thought that was a Zoom bomb for a second, but we're safe. We're safe. It's just a
Me too.
person being creative. So Charvi, could you delete that annotation?
yes, I'll delete that annotation.
And do we know why our poll is?
I am unsure about that, but and
Okay,
first poll was working. So how about we move on to the next
okay,
slide?
okay. Okay, so Bill?
Okay, so our project began back in October. We're going to take until probably September or October of 2021 to do the entire project. So we're still relatively early in the process. After our project initiation, we worked, Highland Planning did an excellent job developing the public engagement plan, which was shared with the Comp Plan Update Committee, refined, and then we worked on the first survey, which is currently live and active. So those two particular aspects of the project, tasks 1 and 2, are completed or in process right now. We're also working on task number 3, which is the community assessment or profile, which is really just a documentation of existing conditions, everything from updates to any infrastructure, new projects, changes in the code, as well as demographic and economic information. Tonight we're in what's called the issues and opportunities phase. That's what we'll be focusing on tonight. But we'll be having another public meeting for visioning and goals. And then the team will get into programming and implementation strategies, and then really writing the draft comprehensive plan. Then we'll have another series of public engagement meetings, and then we will draft the final plan after we hear from everybody on our draft plan, and then wrapping up with a lot of GIS mapping. The next slide kind of shows us where we are in the process from a timeline. So this is the first week, maybe it's the second week in December. So we're pretty much right on schedule with where we had anticipated this first public meeting to be. All of the red annotation on the left side shows you during each task when you'll have an opportunity to participate in the process, either by joining the comp plan update committee meetings, which are always live and can be joined by anybody in the community. The public meetings are certainly live and available for everybody. And we have the current survey that's going on. And we'll also have another survey once we've prepared the recommendations of the comp plan and really get some feedback on what we're proposing to do. And those proposals and recommendations will be based on the input we get from everybody tonight. Then we work toward the end of September and October toward adoption of the plan with the town board. Next slide. Tanya, this is you.
Thank you. So before our process started, we thought it was important to get an understanding of what the issues and opportunities are, and to hear how best to engage the Bethlehem community. So we conducted quite a few interviews with people, and we asked them the same 4 or 5 questions. And we heard a lot about what the assets and opportunities are that people think about are occurring in Bethlehem, and also what some of the issues and concerns are. So at the top of the list was that the town has the top school districts in New York State, and people are very proud of the schools. They also enjoy the parks and open spaces. They're proud of the senior services and the public services that the town offers. They like the rural and historic character of the community, and they feel that Bethlehem is a socially conscious community. We did hear a bit about the unequal resource and infrastructure distribution between Del Mar and other parts of the town in the other hamlets. We heard about a lack of racial diversity and a lack of inclusion in the community, the need for preservation of historic sites, buildings, and rural character. And then other concerns noted was motorized traffic passing through the town, barriers to business expansion, the development of former farms and rural lands, the availability of affordable and age-friendly housing, the town's financial resources, and I think, particularly in the wake of COVID, neighborhood connectivity and that cut-through traffic impacts neighborhoods, and then finally, property owners' rights and flexibility of uses on rural land. Okay, so as promised, it is 6:25. We are going to be breaking out into 7 groups. I will be facilitating the group that will be talking about aging. And I would say, I think when we set this group up, we intended aging to mean senior citizens or citizens aging and staying in the town. But if you came here with concerns regarding school-age children or younger ages, please come to my group and we can talk about all ages. Kevin and Karen will be facilitating the group on economic development. Jeremy Snyder will be leading one group on environment and sustainability, and Frank Armento and Rob Leslie will be in another. Bill Price and Leslie Lombardo will be talking historic preservation. Brian and Brittany will be talking about housing. And finally, Mike and Nate will be in a group regarding transportation. So when you get there, we're going to be talking about this list of questions that you see on the screen right now. Biggest issues and challenges, what the town could do better, what resources does the town lack, what's going well, and what would you like to see more of? So we're going to take about 30 minutes in each of those groups. And then right at 7 o'clock on the dot, we will be reconvening here as a large group to hear report outs and to hear what everyone discussed. If you're on Facebook Live, you're going to see a pause to the live stream or just a lack of action on the live stream and on the project website. But we will be back at 7 o'clock on the dot for the report out.
Okay, now I'll move you all to the breakout groups.
Is people who are putting a lot of energy and time into their own gardens to make them with a lot of native plants. What do? You know, you sell your property, that property then reverts to probably all turf, when in fact it's become this little oasis of biodiversity. And I don't know if anyone's addressed that as a kind of problem or potential set of ways of doing some kind of continuation of these great gardening practices for the next owner. I know that's very hard to make happen between property owners. When you leave, you know, that's it. The new owner determines what happens. So those are some of the issues, or not issues, but I just think opportunities. The last one too is the form of residential and commercial properties now. What do we have to try to take advantage of passive solar? It seems like, you know, the developers may or may not include that if they think there's a market for it. But it just seems that we should take advantage of all that sunlight coming in if you have a good exposure, and to design to do that in some of the subdivisions or all of the future subdivisions. So that's my set.
Thank you.
Nancy, are you aware of any resources available that help people who are interested in doing that kind of gardening? We tried to hire someone to help us, and she's just jam-packed and hasn't gotten back to us going on a year now. So
who have you reached out to?
Oh God, her name is escaping me. I'll just give me a minute and I'll think of it.
Yeah, there's a huge out there just on the web. Just begin by always looking for the native plants.
Yeah.
And Master Gardeners, I know, is very trained in that. Some of the gardening groups, it's all part of the Telemi kind of philosophy now. So I don't know if there's a formal program through the town or.
Yeah, and that's just kind of what I was getting at. I wasn't trying to hijack the conversation.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I
just want everyone else to think that I'm going to try to do that. Just, you know, if not, it would be helpful for people to have those kind of resources. But thank you. I really appreciate that.
No, I think that's great. And just moving on to some of the other questions, and some of you are already addressing these. What are some of the policies, actions, goals that the town could be implementing toward, you know, a higher quality environment and sustainability? And do you have any examples of other communities that are doing these things well that we could learn from and apply?
Sorry, can you just repeat that one more time?
Yeah, so, you know, we started out with sort of addressing some of the concerns in the town, and some of you have jumped ahead a little bit, which is great, on maybe some of the things the town could be doing or should be doing. So we want to learn a little bit more about some of the policies or actions that the town could implement here, some of your ideas, and whether you have any good examples of other municipalities that are doing things that you really like that Bethlehem should model?
The town of New Scotland had done, I think, some very impressive planning and zoning changes and adjustments around the 85, Route 85. That's now will be adjacent to the Bender Farm, but that will be a mixed-use commercial. And they really paid attention to a lot of the recommended setbacks for streams, land preservation in certain sections. It was very physical, very much oriented towards the land features. And they really packaged together a good combination of code, I think, that very protective of the natural areas there and also allowing mixed use development. So that's a potential place.
Excellent, excellent. Anything else in terms of policies and actions related to ecosystem health, wetland protection, farmland protection, renewable energy, anything like that that you can think of, or other municipalities that are doing things that you like that we could potentially incorporate into our review?
This is Carol Neemore again. I'm not answering your question specifically, but I just think that the Vista Park, the Vista Tech Park, is a poster child for something that's not sustainable development. Huge expanses of hard asphalt surfaces and spread out single-story buildings. Took up a gorgeous piece of land that was approaching the Norman Skill watershed. And I think as we go forward, things like impervious, not allowing for impervious surfaces and such huge expanses, not allowing for just single-story buildings that just consume so much land, and thinking a lot more innovative about how we can, accommodate development in a way that has a green look to it and is protective of our stormwater problems and so forth, and biodiversity. So I know there are like Ithaca, I think, has a program where it encourages the planting of native trees that will withstand climate change pressures, as well as, help the soil and incorporate really a look at a way to use our native plantings and when we do permit development.
Thank you, Carol. That's great. Anyone else?
I know some towns that have put programs in to kind of encourage residents to buy locally and introduce them to options, like food wise, and introduce them to options. Like, for myself, it was like a CSA in Troy. I think there's just a lack of understanding and information on that. So I think, I don't know a ton about any towns nearby that have done that, but I've read about some just kind of nationally that have just educated people by introducing them to food growers that are within a 10-mile or 20-mile radius.
Thank you.
So this is Rebecca Hathaway again, and the last speaker, thank you. I was thinking as we went down this list of pesticides and composting and balancing things and stormwater, renewable energy, all these things, is that I don't know who else is doing this around here, but I think in Bethlehem, maybe this should be an opportunity where we can also educate people that live in the hamlets about and find a way to reach out to educate them about alternates to pesticides and about native plantings and about renewable energies. I think people just like all of us, are very busy all the time, and we can only take in so much. And sometimes it's nice to have available to us, maybe through the town, information that is easily digestible and where we could consider our options. I think that would be very important, and that is educating people is where it starts, I think, and then we can all do our part as well as participate in planning.
Great. Anything, and I think a few of you may have commented on this already, surrounding development in the town. As someone brought up the Vista Tech Park, with respect to development, whether it's housing, transportation policy, anyone like to comment on, what's working, what's not working so well? How about town services as they relate to environmental quality and sustainability? Anything with regards to the town's current services or services that could be improved that you'd like to comment on?
I think the town's composting leaf, mulch program is really amazing. I think it goes unrecognized as to the quality of leaf mulch and composting that's generated from there. And I think anything that, enhances that is to our advantage. And to export it out to other communities would be great. But that I see as a real excellent town service.
This is Susan Burkhead. My husband, who's the public health expert, has to go out and play with our grandchildren. But one thing, and I can barely articulate it, and he could do a much better job, is that when we think of public health now, we need to think about every decision that's made. How does that affect health? So whether it's putting in sidewalks or slowing the traffic down or not using pesticides, or I don't know, Gus, give me more examples of the kind, any policy decisions, think about health effects. So walkable communities and so forth. So as you go forward, just, in this planning, think about health effects. Health in all policies. He's over dictating in the background.
No, that's great. Those are the comments I was looking for, but that's and I heard some of that in some of the other comments, but that's very helpful.
This is Carol again. I would like to build on what Nancy recognized, the town's strength in the composting. And the town is moving toward food waste composting. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to operate, but people should be made aware that their food wastes are a major source of greenhouse gas emissions if they go into a landfill and if they're not composted. So I think as the town goes forward, if there's good ways to encourage residents in all settings, not just the hamlets, but in other areas of the town, in a way that we can participate in food waste composting at the town's facility in a way that makes it easy to do, because it would make such a huge change for greenhouse gas emissions.
Sorry, Carol, you said that is on the horizon?
Yes, there is an expansion of the compost facility to accept food waste. And I'm not sure if it will be for like, I'm not the expert on this part, but conceivably like large generators of food waste, like, restaurants and hotels and things like that, would bring it there and pay a tipping fee. In addition, and that would help support the costs of running that. But in addition, the town should think creatively in a way to how do we encourage our citizens to participate in food waste composting and have access to the facility like
Yeah.
we do with our leaves.
Because I've reached out to the head of recycling, and it's not right now an option. So we currently drive out to Troy every weekend to drop ours off. There's also a place in Albany that does it, and there's another option where they'll come and pick it up, but it's somewhat expensive. So I think it'd be great to add consumers' ability to drop off compost at that facility as well. Or teach people how to build one. We just haven't done it because of animals, but eventually that'll be on the horizon too.
I think sometimes we underestimate what's happening at the local level in neighborhoods. So I think a lot of people are composting right now. Whether or not they're successful is another question. But if there's some way of creating the network of people who are composting, you know, a lot of times they need food waste to beef up the wets in their compost pile. So, you know, it's a pretty low budget way potentially of just creating the network. So, you know, hey, the person 2 blocks over actually needs your food waste. You just go there, dump it off, and, you know, clarify what's in it. Because I think when you start to get into complex programs to administer, there you go.
Hi, everybody. I want to just note that I think we are all coming back into our larger group of 100 or so people, and we're going to start the report out session. So I am just going to wait to see when Charvi tells me everyone is here.
Yes, everybody is here. The breakout rooms have all closed.
Okay. So I'm curious to know, impromptu question, and maybe you can share in the chat how your breakout group went. How was that experience of breaking out from a larger group and having a more focused conversation? So if you would just share in the chat, and you all should be seeing my screen right now. Can you all see my notes from the aging breakout group?
Yes. By the way, the chat is disabled.
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Charvi, could you see if you could? You're right.
It's good.
It might be under the more button now. It's still there. You might have to go to your control panel and hit the more ... And then it'll be maybe the first option there if it's gone away. Let me know if that works. Okay, so I forgot to count, although I did record, so I can go back and count. I think I was with about 10 or 12 people in the group on aging, and no one agreed to do the report out. So I, the consultant, am going to provide a very brief summary of our conversation. And I wanted to share that the first thing that we did was discuss that we wanted to be considering both those who are aging and residents with disabilities. So we sort of changed the category slightly right out of the gate. So regarding the biggest issue regarding aging and those with disabilities in the town, we talked a lot about the need to accommodate infrastructure and design and sidewalks, parks, and housing to accommodate those with disabilities and those who are aging. The group really wants to see a more use of universal design. We talked about the need for one floor living, multi-family housing, and that the housing that's being built now is not affordable. So people want to live in walkable areas. They want one floor living. And they also discussed that they'd like a senior center. We talked about where that might go and the desire to see that in the center of town where it's walkable. But I think the major issue summed up really nicely as we came back to the group was that there's a lack of connectivity with transportation and with people. So what could the town do better? There are some neighborhood support groups and networks to help people stay in place. We talked about Bethlehem Neighbors, and that's a group of people who are helping people age in place. They talked about creating a community center. So not just a senior center, but a community center with a focus on senior programs and with programs that, that bring people of different ages together. Again, anytime there are infrastructure improvements, they should consider universal design. They talked about a van service or a micro transit to move people through town, and that residents might be willing to pay for this. What resources does the town lack? Money and possibly volunteers or personnel. What's going well in the town regarding the needs of senior citizens? The senior programs are tremendous. They're a hidden gem. The senior transportation for appointments and shopping is great too. What people would like to see more of. They'd like to see more people aware of Bethlehem Neighbors. That's the group helping people age in place. They'd like to see transportation for other ages. They'd like the town planning department to study, analyze, and recommend improvements that help senior citizens and those with disabilities. And they'd like people with expertise on these topics, whether infrastructure or aging or people with disabilities, to be solicited for input and direction by the town, and specifically using the skills of senior citizens to greater effect. So that was my group, and I think the next group was economic development, I believe. While I'm switching over to their notes, which are on a Google Drive, is there anything I missed or anything that people want to add regarding aging? Hearing none, I will turn the floor over to Kevin to see who is going to report out for economic development. And
we did have a volunteer, Maureen, if you could unmute yourself and give us the synthesis.
Okay. Hi, I'm Maureen McGinnis. I'm president of the Bethlehem Chamber of Commerce. So we ran out of time. There was so much to discuss. It was great. So one of the things that came up is that I hear is difficulty that businesses have going through the planning board process. It takes too long for a project to get approved. The planning board needs to have some representation from businesses on board. There's a lack of understanding of how the business economy works. And this makes a difference when a business is deciding if they should locate in Bethlehem. We also discussed how to encourage startups and small businesses. It was shared by one member of our committee how there were, the town made it easier for solar companies to come in and permit, and everything was streamlined. If we could think of a way that we could streamline and make it easier to go through the permitting process for small businesses, that could be helpful as well. It was also brought up that, given everything that's currently happening, some businesses aren't expected to survive over the winter, and that's our critical problem right now. We had a lot of discussion about the rail trail and how it's great, but there are opportunities that are missed. There were some food trucks there this past summer, but it wasn't necessarily the best format. People want a chance to connect businesses to the rail trail. Also would like to encourage more small restaurants. Also would like to, they were talking about incubator space, so that we could encourage more diverse offerings in of small business, especially restaurants. And perhaps that would be a location to have the farmers market in the wintertime. There's a need for incentives to encourage small businesses to refresh their facade and the signage and things like that. There was discussion about having the town encourage more social gatherings outside, perhaps closing down the streets and, you know, having a festival, that type of thing. It was shared about the micro enterprise grant program and the support that that provides to small businesses. And that also the Bethlehem IDA is currently doing grants to reimburse businesses for PPE during this time. The closure of institutions like the dive tank and the pool closed over the summer was not positive for jobs and commerce. The land use moratorium it was brought up, is there something in between? A uniform moratorium with no building for a year is too much. And the economic development in town will be inhibited for the next couple of years due to the moratorium. What could we do better? One of the challenges is intergovernmental communication. So, you know, the rail trail is maintained by the county. The food trucks was the county project. You know, also there's, you know, construction that happens at a state level, like for example, in Glenmont right now, and our businesses need to have communication on that, and that's not coming from the state. So that's a challenge. The opportunity is to have the planning board have a small business person representing economic development. It was shared that in other towns, planning boards are, I can't see with the chat up, I'm sorry. In other towns, planning boards move a little bit more quickly because the planning board members do the due diligence and their questions are answered by reading the documents ahead of the planning board meetings. A small business owner said that she did not know about the town-based incentive programs and grants, so communication needs to be improved towards business. It was brought up that some of our businesses do use social media very well and others not so much. The town should consider bringing in a media guru to show how to use Instagram and Facebook. There's a need for more grant programs to support small business productivity and connections. We also reminded people to sign up for the Chamber of Commerce emails so that they can get notices about the trainings that we do and the grant programs offered by the town. People would like to see an expansion of amenities on the rail trail. There's a lot of people in town who'd like more connectivity. Four Corners is walkable, dense, and it offers an opportunity for more businesses in the heart of Delmar. Walkability is, you know, came up over and over that we need to continue to foster this, particularly in Delmar, as well as Slingerlands and other places connected to the rail trail. People brought up the fact that Four Corners is an asset that other places tried to replicate, but it's already there. We have to continue that momentum. People shared that they use the rail trail every day, multiple generations, and there's untapped potential. It was shared that the county has some financial assistance for small businesses, and that information will be coming out shortly. And we talked about the Fall Fest that Perfect Blend has, that perhaps we can, you know, build off that and, you know, block off the street to celebrate and encourage businesses to interact. We discussed that the IDA works to bring in businesses to enable the growth of the tax base, and that they continue to look for businesses that are within their mission. It was shared by residents that while they don't necessarily rejoice every time they pay their taxes, they do see the value for what they're getting, that the services are excellent. So that makes paying that tax bill more bearable.
Thank you. Great summary. That was a lot that you all accomplished in half an hour. So our next group is I think it's the first environment and sustainability group. Let's see if, Jeremy, are you seeing your notes?
Yes, and Rob Leslie's gonna summarize this.
Hi, Tanya.
Hi.
So we were unable to select a volunteer. We had so many people volunteer that we just couldn't select one. No, so I decided to do it. So we talked about the environment and sustainability. Our conversation really ranged from a lot of different factors. We talked about backyard chickens to solar panels to mixed use and walkability. So, the sustainability topic spans many fields, and we certainly captured a lot of that discussion, even open space preservation. So we hit on a lot of topics with regards to what are the biggest concerns with respect to the environment and sustainability. Maintaining clean air and water were important to folks. Those are some concerns. It was mentioned about proximity to SABIC, making sure that they do what they should be doing to on their rail yards to keep our air quality safe. Noting that our waste facilities lead to the Hudson, trying to keep the Hudson River clean is important. The balance of preservation of open space and important conservation areas was a concern. How do we manage that with consistent proposed housing projects? Looking to see less housing being developed and more preservation of open space. Climate change was a concern for our participants. We also talked about things we can do as a town to cut our energy waste, some inefficiencies. Perhaps these could be done through sustainability initiatives that come out of this plan. Future developments, if you can scroll up. So here's where you can start to see some of the conversation went into other areas, recognizing that sustainability includes mixed uses. So mixed developments, mixed uses that can also help support our aging population. Having cafes and restaurants in easy walking distance. There's very little going out towards the Slinglands area, so very little in regards to mixed use development in the Slinglands area. And it was mentioned that more is needed in this area of the town for those types of land uses. Biking, also mentioned that biking was not safe in this area, in the Slinglands area of town. And then housing also came up again about where do we want our houses and where don't we want them? The plan should help come to those types of decisions. Moving on to what's going well. So we had some positive conversation on what's going well in the town and what would we like to see more of. The rail trail was mentioned as a key resource in our community. Folks like to see the charging stations along the rail trail. I thought that has been a good addition by the county. We like the fact that we have hiking trails and the efforts of our local conservation organization, the Mohawk Hudson Land Conservancy. The recycling program is amazing. I'd like to see more plastics, but some folks mentioned that may be out of our control. And then they like the fact that we are doing a good job serving as a walkable and bikeable community, and those modes help us drive less. CDTA, public transportation, is good, and folks were happy to hear that the comprehensive plan is moving ahead despite the coronavirus and the pandemic, that we were able to continue to move the conversation along with the community. And there were also comments about the town's recent efforts towards community choice aggregation was a great idea, and it seemed easy to this gentleman, and they appreciated the efforts towards that. If you can keep scrolling down. With regards to goals being set for environment and sustainability, an overarching goal would be that 3 sectors in our community, the town government, business, and residents, all work together to set targets towards sustainability. We'd like to see expand upon solar panels in our town, and that the real benefit comes from large-scale solar rather than rooftop solar on individual homes. The real benefit towards greenhouse gas reduction is the large scale solar. And while we're seeing more large scale solar, let's try and balance agriculture with that large scale solar farms. So agriculture allowed to continue, or the design of the solar fields to allow agriculture to continue underneath the panels. And so that probably gets into the panel height and allowing farming and agriculture to continue with the large scale solar. Encouraging smarter development. Again, we heard the term mixed use. I think behind this large scale residential development should be, can't see that, should include pocket parks. So obviously a reflection on recreation opportunities within any large scale residential development. Scale of housing, some comment was that it was too large. And we really need to be looking at new housing with a critical eye for it to be sustainable. A larger goal that we should be looking at is aligning our laws and regulations with New York State's goals, or aligning our goals with New York State's goals in relation to zero out greenhouse emissions by 2050. And this is related to the new Climate Act passed by the state, I believe it was last year or earlier this year. And we would want to move Bethlehem towards zero emissions by 2050. Sustaining open spaces needs to be balanced with property rights. So that's always a common theme we hear with preserving open spaces, but also reflecting on property rights. And we felt that we should have goals related to getting cars off the road and improving walkability and bikeability and using public transportation. And then some policies or actions that we should be enacting. Simplifying regulations for egg-laying hens, so backyard hens. I think the comment here is related to making it easier for folks to have chickens in their backyard, and also building out educational programs so folks are aware of sustainability and focusing on the youth who are attuned to environmental issues. And then finally, I think there's one last question we talked about. What are other communities doing well? If you can just scroll down, we looked at perhaps looking at. Oh, I'm jumping ahead, but I'll go ahead and do that. If you could just jump ahead to the last comment there. Looking at Ithaca, some folks mentioned policies and activities in California and Washington State might serve as good role models.
Thanks, Rob. Charlie, I'm looking for my second environment and sustainability in the Google Drive, and I'm not seeing it. So I'm going to move to historic preservation and then come back to that second group when I find their notes.
Hi, I'd just like to add a note to the sustainability group.
Great.
That I forgot, and it's important to me. And that is a concern about the amount of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers that are used on lawns, both in commercial lawns and residential lawns and gardens, that are poisoning not only the land, but also the water runoff. So I think we need, so a goal for 2040 would be to eliminate the use of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers in our town.
Thanks. We will add that to the notes from that last group. Bill and Leslie, I have your preservation notes up. Do you see them?
Yep, we do. And we are going to ask Georgia Fishburne to read through it. I just want to bring up that the group pointed out that this is a fairly new topic in the town, one that not a lot of people really know a lot about. So you won't necessarily see our comments and notes following the same format that you all, the previous groups discussed. Georgia, are you there?
Yep. So I'm Georgia Fishburne. I'm a comprehensive plan update committee member and sitting in on the historic preservation breakout room. And we had probably 10 to 12 participants in the breakout room, and we identified a few of the issues with the historic preservation. And the first one being there is no common goal, and answering the question of whether there should be or shouldn't be historic districts pursued in the town. We do have one historic district in Slingerlands, but that was a sort of a grassroots effort. And I think part of the issue is maybe getting some education out to the residents and and explaining why it is important. And the group members, the groups, the people that were in this breakout room were members of organizations that are very active in participating in saving historic structures in the town, including the Bethlehem Historical Association and Preserve Bethlehem, and even Bethlehem Tomorrow. So as I said, the focus has been mainly on Slingerlands. There was an inventory of structures in 1996, which was done by, I believe a high school student was all overseen, but it was done in 96 and is not really complete and needs to be updated. It was pointed out that the history of the town began in the Cedar Hill area, and that's also where the schoolhouse is. But people are not aware of where all these historic properties are and what their significance is. So again, that goes back to education and how do we engage the public in understanding the importance of historic preservation. It was brought up by a member of the breakout room that Old Delmar maybe should be considered to be looked at as a historic district. Ellesmere is another one. And there have been several areas in town. The biggest issue is like identifying areas where in the past where we've lost buildings because they've been taken down, so that it was either an infill development or there was development. One of them was a home, the back of Maple Ave on Delmar, which was the Grosbeck Farm. Slingerlands, someone mentioned the house behind what used to be Monza Restaurant. That was the William Slingerland house, was taken down. A train station in Slingerlands, which is now the firehouse, and so on. So a lot has been lost, and those are not things you can get back. So the next question was, are there sites that need to be protected? And the answer to that was a resounding yes. And the idea of a historic district commission was brought up in a way to save structures and save areas. And one of them is currently, I think, is a concern for most people, is the church on Crunk Hill Road. I think I was told that daycare was looking into purchasing it, but let me quickly look. I don't want to repeat what I've just said. We did reach out to several different towns in this area, Clifton Park being one, Altamont being another, not Altamont, sorry, New Scotland and Voorheesville, where we spoke to members of the historic commissions of those towns to get an idea. There are a variety of ways to set up a historic commission, and they can either have very stringent rules on how you're part of or considered a historic structure, or they could be more take a more advisory role. But what they do bring is tools for the planning board when it comes down to making a decision on zoning or making a decision on a site application. But the biggest issue is if it is a stringent historic commission, then the issue is, well, will a resident who owns a historic home want to have to abide by all these types of rules? So again, that goes back to education. And the idea is basically to weigh the pros and cons of different types of historic commissions. And then ultimately, what's needed right now is an inventory of what the town does have, and we're talking about all the hamlets, all 7 hamlets of the town of Bethlehem, not just something like Slingerlands or Delmar. So I think the other question that was brought up, I think was brought up by Bill, was, do you allow accessory dwelling units in order to help with maintaining a historic property. That's pretty much where we ended. So the main things were a survey needs to be done, whether or not to look at historic commission and weigh the pros and cons. What would be incentives for historic homeowners to want to be part of this? So it's about education and maybe incentives. And then when there's a situation with infill, how do we provide the planning department with tools that you could have an infill as long as you follow some sort of guidelines, whether it be matching the roof lines or what have you, the setbacks and so on.
Thanks, Georgia. Great job. So I am going to refresh here. Here we go. And I'm going to circle back to Frank Armento's group. If I can get my computer to, what's going to happen? Here we go. So I'm pulling up the notes from the second sustainability group. And I wanted to mention to everyone that this was the group, you pre-registered for this meeting and you selected what group you wanted to be a part of. And this was the group that had the most interest. So late in the game, we decided to make 2 groups so that everybody, more people could participate in their first choice. So Frank, did you have a volunteer to report out on environment and sustainability?
We don't. We don't, but I was gonna ask if Carol Nemore might want to do it. If not, I can do it.
The other thing I want to say is at 7:30, we have a Q&A and just a discussion of next steps. And we still have a few more groups to report out. So we're going to run a little over on this agenda item so that we can hear from everyone. But let's try to keep it to 5 minutes if we can.
I would prefer not to do the report out.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
didn't mean to put you on the spot. I thought
You did.
You had a lot of comments, so I thought maybe
Okay.
you'd be a good choice. Okay, I will go ahead and run through this. So this really builds on Rob's presentation and summary. There's a lot of similar items and as well as some different items. So I'll touch on these. Overall, I think generally speaking, the participants felt that the town was at least headed in the right direction with environmental quality and sustainability. So that was definitely a positive. There were some questions surrounding how the comprehensive plan would guide sustainability. Things like policies and actions that would come out of the planning process and how that might influence and guide decision-making in the town in the future. So there were a few of those questions. There was sort of the overarching question about sustainability, and it is a big topic, and hence I believe that's why there was a lot of interest, because people come at it from a lot of different perspectives. So we tried to do our best to define it, but we really wanted to hear from all of you on what you felt was how sustainability is defined, and we talked a little bit about that. We talked about farmland preservation, natural resource preservation, town services, and we really wanted to hear from the residents here and the stakeholders on priorities. So one of the initial comments was on farmland preservation and it being a concern in sort of how you balance farmland preservation and property rights, and providing some flexibility in that process, and how you look at both property rights and preservation, and coming up with a balance and providing some flexibility. There were some comments on renewable energy. The comment was that the town is moving in the right direction, particularly on solar energy. There was an acknowledgement there that there's in some cases some pushback on use of farmland for solar arrays, but sort of the general comment was sort of balancing that out, you know, how we achieve more renewable energy development while balancing, you know, the farmland preservation. Additional comments about property rights and managing development to sustain and accommodate both new residents, but also protect the environment and habitat. You know, protecting groundwater, for example, was one of the comments. There were comments surrounding pesticide use and how it's used just for aesthetic reasons and how that could be tempered or in some way restricted. There was a discussion surrounding composting, and one of the comments, and I think it'll come up later if you could scroll, was the composting services that the town provides, and that it's a very good program. One of the commenters discussed the smart communities, climate smart communities program, and how it should be incorporated into the comprehensive plan. Again, more comments on solar energy in particular and its incorporation into the town code. There was a discussion surrounding native plants and planting of those and how that relates to when properties change hands, and also some comments on passive solar development. Policies, programs in the town that are going well. One of the commenters mentioned New Scotland and zoning changes surrounding Route 85 and the emphasis on mixed use and commercial development, preservation of land, and sustainable features and being incorporated into development such as natural habitat. There was a comment on Vista Tech Park as an example of not so sustainable development, too much impervious surfaces, incorporation of more pervious surfaces, pervious pavements, more compact development, use of green infrastructure, natural features to capture stormwater. There were some comments on, again, this was related to capturing the sort of agricultural economy and buying local, introducing residents to nearby food growers and making it more of a local emphasis. Educating residents about pesticides, renewable energy, native plants. So there was an education component to all of the things that we talked about, and how to integrate the education process into these, because the topics are broad and not everyone understands them. I mentioned earlier about the composting program, and these are related to some of the town services currently, and someone commented that the composting program is truly amazing. And there could be some opportunities to export those ideas to other communities. Compact development, walkability, sidewalk maintenance were all mentioned, particularly in the context of public health, community health, and how to integrate sustainable development with an emphasis on public health policy. I mentioned the food waste composting and how it could have the potential to minimize greenhouse gas emissions. And then creating these networks again surrounding sort of composting and food waste and other composting opportunities.
Thank you, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have two more groups here, and I'm going to go to housing next.
Great. While you're doing that, Joanne Vogel from our group volunteered to go over this. We had about 20 people in our group, and we had a lot of discussion. So hopefully Joanne can give us a little bit of an update.
Okay, I am working on making the screen bigger. Here we go.
Okay. Hi. I have a quick question. So Tanya, will you be able to share all of these notes on the website?
Sorry, I'm muted. We will create a meeting summary, one document that documents all of these discussions, and we will post it to the project website at Bethlehem Forward. Yes.
Excellent. So I'm going to do a much shorter version of the summary of this. So a lot of what we talked about actually encompasses what pretty much everybody has touched on at one point or another, having to do with sustainability, preservation, economic development, and aging, all through the general overview of the housing, from talking about the review of demographics, senior housing, talking about the density in the center of the town, concerns about the cost of housing, people wanting to live in walkable areas, concerns about diversity, options like co-housing, intentional community housing, talking about planning for development and how we can develop in a positive way. And this could be the fact that the CPUC will concentrate on looking into planning, zoning, and the like, more as a master plan, and how we look at the overall scope of maybe the future development of the town will be saying how we want it to be instead of letting it happen based on general, piece by piece, that it will be updated so that it ends up the way we want it to be in the end, based on all these considerations that we're discussing tonight and over the next year, so that by the time that we're done and we open it back up after the moratorium, that we have, the housing, the, aging, everything that we're taking into consideration can all work together in the end to take care of some of these issues. And then, there was a lot of notes, so hopefully everybody can read the notes from the website.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have one more group left, and that is transportation. Mike, are you out there?
Yep, we actually had Mike McCarthy volunteer to give us a brief overview. He said he's shooting for 1.5 minutes.
All right, Mike.
Hello, everyone. So interesting enough, a lot of the common themes have really kind of connected here right at the very end with traffic, mostly because it begins with a T and the last. Generally, it seems like there's some traffic issues around some of the schools at the start and the end. Generally, it was decided that the structure of the traffic actually, or transportation, works really well for cars. A lot of the conversation focused around making it more walkable, more bikeable, safer for pedestrians and whatnot. But also recognizing, this is something that's very important, is that even though a road goes through Bethlehem, it actually could be controlled by the state or other entities, and we don't have as much control over those as we like. For example, there's some areas where they're building a roundabout. I think it was in Selkirk. If you can go ahead and scroll down, please. Another idea was that we wanted to make it. There were some ideas that to make things better, to connect people to things like, for example, it's really difficult to walk or bike to Elm Park, especially for children. Let's see, it was interesting how much the transportation you'd think that we would talk about roads and speed limits, but we really talked a lot about bikes and walkability and sidewalks, and making this a community. And the kind of the balance that we have, like as I said, I'm a big proponent of roundabouts, and it makes it very efficient for cars, but I don't necessarily think it makes it very safe for pedestrians. And sometimes it's right for in some places, and sometimes it's not right in others. And we need to be very mindful going forward. And as we engage with New York State DOT. So yeah, that's about it. There really was there were some specifics, there were some a lot of generalities, but it all kind of touched on a lot of other themes that were talked about, and how we want to make this place connected with each other and outside as well, with the rail trail and the bus traffic, like Route 18. So I don't know. Did I do it in 90 seconds? Maybe 2 minutes?
You did great. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm going to stop my share. That was everybody's report out, and I'm going to go back to my trusty PowerPoint to see if there are any questions on the floor. And I am, let's see, so you could raise your hand in the participant. Or you could just unmute if you have a question, not to create chaos. There's 82 of us left here.
I do.
Please.
Regarding the historical areas that you talked about earlier, do you know that anything 50 years or older could be considered a historic district? Now, I'm wondering if there's anything in town that was built, say, after World War II with a bunch of houses to bring the soldiers home or something. Those areas could be considered historic areas, just to let you know. And of course, I live in the historic area down in Selkirk.
So Roberta, this is Georgia. There is on Maple, I think it's Maple Avenue in Selkirk, there are quite a few Sears homes, and that would be considered historic.
Yeah. I mean, that's just something to keep in mind if we're, if you want to get a historic designation.
Absolutely.
For an area. Thanks.
Thank you. I saw a raised hand, but then it went away.
That made my mind. I was just wondering how residents continue to stay involved, like what the options are going forward.
Oops, great question. Thank you. So I'll skip ahead here to, there is a survey open right now. It covers some of the things we discussed tonight, but there's some other questions in there as well. As of today, I think we had 1,100 responses, which is amazing. But if there's anybody here tonight that has not taken the survey, please go to Bethlehem Forward and take the survey. And if you would share that on Facebook, share it with neighbors. We'd like to get thousands of responses. The next comprehensive plan update meeting is next Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. And that is live streamed, correct, Rob?
We'll try. Yeah.
Sorry. If it's not live streamed, it is public.
Right.
Correct.
It's public. You can register. We'll have the registration for that committee meeting. So that's a committee meeting. We'll have the registration for that committee meeting up tomorrow on the Bethlehem Forward website as well as the town website. And we also record those meetings so folks can watch them at a later date. If they aren't available at 5 o'clock, they can watch the meetings at a later date.
So the meeting summary for tonight will be posted on bethlehemforward.com, and additional meetings will be advertised there as well. And then the next public meeting, we're hoping to take place in February, and that will be focusing on visioning and goals. So taking all of what we've heard tonight and thinking about setting a vision.
And Tanya, we also have presence on Facebook and Instagram at Bethlehem Forward. So I encourage everybody to check us out on social media. We have been continuously active on those media, so please pay attention to those. You may have seen the lawn signs around town promoting the project. We have vehicle decals on town trucks and town vehicles. So Those will be around to the end of the process, and we want to keep the energy and keep the interest going from the public. If you want to send a simple email, you can send an email to bethlehemforward@townofbethlehem.org. So we've got the website, social media, as well as the email address for folks to continuously engage the consulting team, the committee members, as well as town staff.
Thank you. Did we answer your question? Hope so. Okay, Richard has his hand raised. Richard Cotlow.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great. I have a yard sign, and it'd be nice if maybe some PR would, and I'm an active neighbor, but nobody really has asked me about what Bethlehem Forward is about. Maybe I'll volunteer, but for those of us who have yard signs, if some PR could go out and say, seek out the neighbor with the yard sign and ask them what Bethlehem Forward is all about. I'd be very happy to discuss it with my neighbors, and that's something I could do.
That's a great idea. Thanks for that, Richard.
Yeah, Richard, that's how I found this, right? I saw it, maybe it was your yard sign, but I was out walking around the neighborhood and I saw it, snapped a picture on my phone, came home, Googled, and here I am. So yeah, agree.
So Richard, that's a good point. And that's kind of what I wanted to say, is that if we look at the survey from the beginning of the meeting, majority of the people that are present are in Delmar, Slingerlands, Ellesmere, but it bothers me that I don't see enough people from Selkirk, North Bethlehem, and South Bethlehem, and Glenmont. And if you are on this call and you want to talk to your neighbors and encourage them to participate, because this comprehensive plan is only as good as the voices that we hear from. So I really do encourage people to join in the effort, and I commend you all for taking the time, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight.
Yeah, this has been a really amazing discussion. Dean Watkins has his hand raised. Dean?
Yeah, just a quick question on what you're talking about. Even after participating, it's not clear to me how these meetings are meant to be different from the town meetings. I mean, I guess it's the long range plan, but I chose to participate sort of last minute. So maybe I'm just being a little bit ignorant to the overall, how it was advertised. But even in the participation, it's not clear to me how to engage going forward and how they're meant to be different from normal town meetings.
Bill Price, do you want to respond to that?
Dean, thank you for the question. A lot of these topics are routinely talked about at the town board level or at the planning board or at zoning board of appeals. So you will hear a lot of these same topics. But the town has been working from an existing comprehensive plan, which was done in 2007, and then, 2005, it was adopted. So the work on it was probably done mostly in 2004. A comprehensive plan update committee updated that plan in 2013. And then the town and the comp plan update committee held community forums again in 2018. This one is a continuation of the work that started in 2018. And what we're trying to do is understand the differences in demographics, economics, any of the physical infrastructure of the town that has changed over that time. And then this meeting, if you ever wondered how, designers and planners, take a blank page and create something out of it, this is the process. So the survey is going to give us certain information. This meeting gave us a lot of information. You can start to see the interrelationship. And this is what we want you to know, is to understand the interrelationship of infrastructure, transportation, historic preservation, land use, density, zoning, and how the town functions. And why did some people not understand things about historic preservation or will be thorny about it? And how does the planning board go about making decisions? What are the rules that guide everybody? This is the overarching document that the next step is to create a vision and the goals that start to really address all of these opportunities that have been addressed tonight. So we encourage you to stay involved. Keep an eye on the comp plan update committee meetings. They're very informative. And then ultimately we come up with a blueprint for the future that addresses how we're going to accomplish and what the priorities are of all these recommendations. So although you hear the topics in other settings, this is the one document that is going to guide the various departments, the administration, and any new work going forward. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
And we will try to address that in the meeting summary as well. I'm seeing some comments in the chat. I'm seeing a lot of interest in lawn signs. So I just want to let everybody here know that we will be taking a look at everything in all the comments in the chat and addressing the questions in the meeting summary. I see Rad has his hand raised, so I'd like to go to him, and he might be our last comment of the night because it is 7:57. Rad.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. I just wanted to your list of activities going forward where the community can remain engaged. I think you had in the participants guidelines that you sent out that you're allowing two weeks from today to receive additional comments. I don't think you mentioned that earlier. Is that still the case?
I'm sorry, I was struggling with my mute button.
No, you're allowing an additional 2 weeks for comments where, participants of tonight's meeting or others can provide input.
Through the project website?
Correct, yes.
Yes, the project website will be open through the course of this process. So that's a mechanism for people to comment throughout the process.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And the survey is open until December 22nd.
Tanya, Kathy Newkirk, I think it's important to mention that people can sign up on the website and they can receive the notices of all meetings. I don't know if anyone mentioned that back in the beginning.
Thank you. $7:58. We have 2 more minutes. If anyone else, I don't see any raised hands.
I just want to mention for those people who can't access online, they can receive a paper copy of the survey, and they can call 518-439-4955, extension 1157. And I'll put that information in the chat as well.
Thanks, Georgia.
So folks, on behalf of the team of consultants, we want to thank you all for showing up. This entire process so far has been done virtually with our comprehensive update committee, with our town staff that we've been working with. I'm not sure we could have expected this kind of turnout and this level of participation. So thank you very much. And please, it's a year-long process, and we want to take our time and get it right and encourage everyone to stay engaged as we go through. It's going to be a very interesting process. Rob, do you have any last comments?
No, I think we're all set. Bill, thanks for your thoughts, and again, thanks everyone. We had over about 150 sign up and over 110 in attendance. So far exceeded my expectations, but I shouldn't be surprised. Bethlehem always steps up to participate when needed. So so thanks again for everyone, and look to seeing you on the next meeting, next public meeting in February. Let's keep the energy moving.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Good
everyone.
night. Thanks, everybody.